All right, guys. So, as we all know, there's been horrific wildfires in LA, just absolutely tearing through all these different communities. I mean, there's higher income areas that were hit. There's, lower income areas that were hit. The natural disaster does not discriminate. It's going to do what it's going to do, and there ain't much you could do to fight back. And so, super scary situation. Obviously, they deserve all the help in the world and all the funding in the world to get back on their feet and, to rebuild. But here's the scary reality. And I've noticed this too, anecdotally, leading up to this point. You no longer see logical connections being made by the media, by the politicians, by your fellow citizens, vis-a-vis these sorts of natural disasters, right? And to prove to you just how bad it is, watch this clip. This should terrify you.
I don't think Americans are making this connection. And the way we can see this in right here and now, take a look at the monthly change and look at the searches for wildfire, up 2,400%. My goodness gracious, this is the most amount of people searching for wildfires ever. It's going back since Google Trends began back in 2004. But look at climate change. Look at the change. It doesn't go hand in hand with wildfires. It's actually down. It's down 9%. And I also looked in California. There has been no increase in the number of searches for climate change. So the bottom line is this. Americans are definitely interested in learning about these wildfires. They're interested in following the news about the wildfires, but they are not making that connection with climate change.
Literally the only overarching point to make about this massive uptick in natural disasters, the only point to make is this is because of climate change. Because it is. It used to be back in the day, there would always be a caveat of, look, hey, you can't blame any single individual event on climate change, but in the aggregate, you could look at the trends and see which way it's going, and you can infer that it has something to do with climate change. Now we're even past that. Now that's not even enough to say that. Now the correct thing to say is, yes, this is because of climate change. More extreme weather events in every direction. That's why a year or two ago, you had record rainfall and LA was flooded. And now we're in the middle of the wet season, what's supposed to be the wet season, and it's bone dry, and a single fucking spark could make the whole city be engulfed in flames. Okay, that definitely is because of climate change. Don't take my word for it. You can go read the studies. You can go read about how wildfires are bigger and more powerful than ever and covering, more territory than ever. You can go read about that. And people are not making the connection. They're not making the connection. And so when you're not connecting it to the broader problem, people just think like, oh, okay, it's an act of God. What are you going to do? There's nothing you could do to address these things, even in the long run. And that's fundamentally not true. It is fundamentally not true. We need to get off of fossil fuels ASAP. For the survival of the species, we have to do that.
That's a really key metric you're looking at there, the connection. Overall, Americans being worried about climate change. What have we seen over time?
Yeah, we have seen a lot of extreme weather events over the last few decades, right? Hurricanes, heat waves, wildfires. You might expect that Americans worry about climate change with climate change worry a lot. You go back to 1991, it was 35%. Now, it was a little bit higher in 2007, a little bit higher in 2022. But look at this. In 2023, the last time we have data, 39%. That is not statistically significantly different from this 35% back in 1991.
That is devastating. So roughly the same percentage of people are worried about climate change as were worried about it in 1991. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a complete and utter collapse among our politicians, our academics, the media. It's rich that CNN is talking about this because they're part of the problem. I remember distinctly back in the day covering a story where they had Bill Nye the Science Guy debate some congresswoman, I think it was Marsha Blackburn, on whether or not climate change is real. They did the false equivalence. They did the both sidesism. They did the, we'll say both things and you decide. They did it. They're responsible for it. This is the problem. In order for something to really sink in, you have to hammer it home and repeat it ad nauseum to the point where it becomes the duh position, the duh reaction. And that's what we need to be doing vis-a-vis climate change and these extreme weather events. Why is it that the insurance companies decided literally not that long ago, a few months ago or whatever it was, insurance companies pulled out of a lot of these places that just caught fire in LA? Why did they do that? Why did they do that? They did that because all they care about is profit, and they looked at it and crunched the numbers, and they went, yep, climate change is making all these things worse. Eventually, they are going to catch fire. But let's just pull out and make sure that we don't have to pay out on these claims. So, you know who knows for sure that climate change is real? The oil companies know. They tried to cover it up for 70 years. For 70 years, they did a massive propaganda effort and tried to cover it up. The insurance companies know. That's why they're making the decisions they're making. Why is that not staying with the rest of us? Why is that not something we talk about all the time? If we had built up the proper arguments and public pressure, we could already be at a point where no politician can deny it without it being, an albatross around their neck. That's where we need to be. Or even Republican politicians. Okay, uncle, yes, climate change is real. We got to do something about it. But we're not there. Because again, it's a failure of the media. It's a failure of academia. It's a failure of our politicians. It's a failure across the board. Nobody does long-term thinking anymore. Nobody looks at the macro picture. Nobody cares about the evidence. Nobody connects the dots. It's all very haphazard, very low IQ, very disgusting, and it's making it so that our future is fucking in jeopardy.
Despite all these extreme weather events, Americans are really no more worried about climate change than they were, what is that, now nearly 35 years ago? I mean, there's just no real trend line here, Mr. Berman.
So the question is why?
Why? Why are they not really worried a lot about climate change? It might be because they feel like there's not a whole heck of a lot they can do.
And again, this is part of that same failure, part of the communications failure. There absolutely is stuff we can, absolutely. What's the number? Like 80% of the emissions are caused by 100 companies or something like that. This is literally a regulation issue. It's a regulation issue.
Humans contribute a great deal. Wow. Again, there's no real trend line here over the last few years. 2019, 49%, 2020, 49%, 2023, 46%, 2024, 45%. That's actually down 4 points from where we were back in 2019. And so less than a majority of Americans believe that humans contribute a great deal to climate change. So the bottom line is that is a big reason why they don't worry a lot. They just don't feel like they can do anything about it.
So the trend line is going down, even as scientists say that the intensity of these storms and these conditions are getting worse.
Even as the extreme weather goes up, humans are not exactly as worried about climate change as they necessarily once were.
Jesus Christ. Oh my God, that's so dark. So, I mean, look, the devastating reality about this is if things don't change, there will come a time where there are literal wars over water and people won't make the connection to climate change. There will come a time where we destroy the food cycle and we're in Dust Bowl-like conditions for extended periods of time and people don't make the connection with climate change. What are we supposed to do with that? What am I supposed to do with that? What am I supposed to do with that? If people have stopped thinking of like, hey, cause effect, like there are consequences to our actions and, hey, we kind of got to fix this stuff as a matter of necessity. If people aren't thinking like that, what are we supposed to do with that? It literally is a societal failure. It's a societal failure at every level. Here we are. And here we are. This clip should terrify you. This clip should terrify you. It should terrify all of us. The fact that even at this late date, even with all the tremendous amount of evidence, people are still not connecting the dots. And also, if anything, you see the smuggest, most idiotic reactions among people. It's not climate, it's DEI. Oh my God. Oh, we're cooked, bro. We're cooked. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.